U.S. Coast Guard is actively pursuing a third dark fleet oil tanker near Venezuela after President Trump seized a second tanker this weekend, disrupting illegal trade worth $8 billion.
I did see that this is another ship that was basically operating in the black market, and so there's been a little bit of black market activity in the oil sector to go to sanctioned countries and to get them some oil, and they're getting that oil in order to avoid, the reforms that we think would make the countries a better place. And so it's not a lot of oil compared to world supply, and so I don't think that people need to be worried here in the U.S. that the prices are going to go up because of these seizures of these ships. There's just a couple of them, and they were black market ships.
Former Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates joins me now. Victoria, great to see you as always. That was Kevin Hassett talking about the economic impact of this, essentially saying nothing to see here. But overall, how significant are these oil tanker seizures, and where do you see all of this going?
Well, good morning, Carly. Good to be with you. Now, this is very important in terms of getting Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela. These so-called shadow tankers, these are old vessels that aren't properly maintained. They're not properly flagged. They don't follow the rules of commercial shipping. So they're actually quite a liability that you could have an accident really easily with them. But they're in Maduro's essentially dark money ATM. They're the way he keeps cash flowing into Venezuela under our sanctions. And it is perfectly legal for us to interdict them when we come across them on the high seas. So this third one, the Bella, so-called, is now being pursued by the U.S. Coast Guard, and that is then oil that we can sell, put the money in an escrow account for the Venezuelan people. And as Kevin said, this is not a ton of oil in the grand scheme of things, and because of President Trump's great energy policies, we don't need that oil. That's just a slush fund for Maduro. So I think the sooner we cut it off, the better.
Wall Street Journal has a piece out right now titled U.S. Oil Blockade of Venezuela Pushes Cuba Towards Collapse. The communist-ruled island was already suffering from food shortages, blackouts, and an exodus of people. Now it faces the loss of cheap oil from Nicolas Maduro. Do you think that's the ultimate goal here, Victoria, to collapse these anti-American regimes, first in Venezuela and then second, much closer to home, in Cuba?
I think they're all related, Carly, and I throw Nicaragua into that club as well. We've had some really positive trends in Latin America for the United States. We've just had President-elect Cast in Chile. We have President Milei in Argentina. These are very pro-American, reform-minded presidents of these countries that can help us with everything from drugs to immigration. They can help us repatriate supply chains here into our own hemisphere. But yes, remember, Cuba, right off the shores of Florida, so close to the United States, has been a hostile regime for more than 50 years. To have now this pressure being put on Cuba, which is dependent first on Russia, but then also on Venezuela, to have that change would be an incredibly good thing for the United States. And we have to remember that our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is of Cuban descent. I know this is of great interest to him.
Right. That's a great point there on Marco Rubio and his personal interests when it comes to Cuba. Moving over to the Middle East, things are not slowing down there because Israel is very concerned that Iran is expanding its ballistic missile program. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is apparently going to be speaking with President Trump at some point this week and giving the president options for attacking Iran again. How significant could this be?
Well, I think it's important what you might call maintenance. After the 12-day war in the spring, both the United States and Israel said that there had been severe damage done, both to Iran's nuclear program and to their missiles, but that both countries reserve the right to go back in and do more maintenance if necessary, if the Iranians tried to reconstitute. And the Israelis seem to think that there is evidence that that is happening. I tend to believe them. They generally know what's happening in their backyard, just like the Western Hemisphere is our backyard. And so, yes, I think the Prime Minister will talk to President Trump. He's coming to Mar-a-Lago on January 29th for further consultations. This will be, I believe, his 5th trip to the United States this year. It's historic, unprecedented coordination between the United States and Israel. And judging from the success of the 12-day war, if there's more action needed on Iran, I would judge that they're going to be successful.
Former Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates, we thank you so much for joining us to break down both of these important topics.
Fox News contributor, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins us now. Mr. Secretary, the Coast Guard springing into action. We know what the drones or F-16s have been doing to the drug boats. How else can we turn up the pressure on this corrupt lunatic?
Good morning, Brian. Look, several tools still available to us. What they're doing on the seas makes the most sense. That's the right course of action. This is the third ship, it sounds like, but don't forget how many ships just aren't traveling because it's too risky. So you don't have to get them all. You just have to convince them all not to sail with this crude oil to destroy the Venezuelan economy and make Maduro go away. The Cubans continue to guard Maduro. That's been a longstanding practice. We shouldn't forget Cuba. The economy in Cuba also is very brittle. And so the combination of tool sets, right, at sea, we could close the airspace over Venezuela, make it very difficult for anybody to get in or out with anything. Those are the kind of things that take all the foreign exchange dollars away from Maduro, which is what's been propping him and the Cubans up for so many years.
What's our responsibility if Maduro hopefully goes soon? Let's say he goes next week. What's America's responsibility then?
Well, look, it'll be the Venezuelan people's responsibility, but there's many things we can do to support them. Most importantly, we can help rebuild what's been a disastrous set of policies about their economy that's destroyed their capacity to thrive, which is their oil sector. So American companies can come in and sell their products. Schlumberger, Halliburton, Chevron, all our big energy companies can go down to Venezuela, build out an economic capitalist model, which will restore Venezuela to what it was. Brian, you and I remember, it was a great economy for so long, and this knucklehead has destroyed it.
Right. And the good news is the ripple effect of having the fall of Cuba right after is likely to happen, and they're already suffering because we're depriving them of their renegade oil. Let's talk about why Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to go to Mar-a-Lago and talk to President Trump. Reportedly, the NBC News and other outlets are reporting that they believe Iran is expanding its ballistic nuclear program, rebuilding its nuclear program again, reconstituting it, and they want permission to take it out. Should we give them that permission if that indeed is the ask?
Of course we should. And frankly, they're going to do it if it's necessary. The Israelis are going to do the necessary for themselves. Brian, none of us should be surprised that Islamist theocrats in Tehran haven't changed their stripes. This is who they are. It's embedded in their DNA. In the same way Hamas is not going to go peacefully give up its weapons, the regime in Iran isn't going to give up its desire to build out a nuclear weapons program. Yeah, if they're rebuilding, we should do the necessary, go take it out. We're capable of doing that. We can't let them rebuild their air defenses. That would make it more difficult to achieve that mission. So time will be critical in making sure the air defense systems in Iran aren't capable of taking down Western aircraft. If we do that, we should continue to go after their program every time they try to rebuild it.
Mr. Secretary, you always say, play out what happens next. It's not just about Iran. Already, because of Iran's weakness, Iraq's beginning to free itself from the grip of Iran's militias inside Iraq. They've had election after election, but they can only go so far because of Iran's influence. How will that help?
Absolutely the case that Iranian money was sponsoring the militias, the Shia militias in Iraq, that had done so much harm to the people of Iraq and had destabilized that place, frankly, since the Gulf Wars. We need to get this right. We need to help the Iraqis build out a political infrastructure, and it won't just be there. You've seen the hard work in Syria. You see the Lebanese people trying to rise up and get it right. The opportunity for prosperity and peace in the region is real. We just need to make sure we don't think we're done and stay after this. If we get it right, really good things can happen. And that's really about putting America first. If we get the stability in the Middle East, it's great for the United States.
I watched Senator Rand Paul over the weekend say, I wish President Trump would just pull our troops out of Syria. This way we wouldn't have any casualties. What's your reaction to that as we fought and achieved retribution over the weekend?
There's always been this strain of thought that says if we just go away and go back in our cubbyhole, then life will be good. The truth is the risk of more casualties, more risk is greater if we don't do the necessary and deter our adversaries. We have to stay vigilant. We don't have to be everywhere and always. We're not the world's policemen, but make no mistake about it. A little bit of forethought, a little bit of deterrence will save lots of American lives.
A lot going into this holiday, a lot on the docket for the president and his policies. These are the things that have to be addressed, and he's doing it all at once. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much. Have a fantastic Christmas.
Thank you, Brian.
So right now, the U.S. Coast Guard is in active pursuit of a third sanctioned oil tanker near Venezuela. And it comes as the Trump administration is mounting a growing pressure campaign on the Maduro regime. Our Madison Scarpino is live in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the president is today. Hi, Madison.
Good morning, Aisha. Officials say this Iranian-linked tanker is a dark fleet vessel, part of Venezuela's illegal sanctions evasion. They say it's flying a false flag. And we could get an update over at Mar-a-Lago this evening from President Trump and his secretaries of War and Navy. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem posting on X about all this, saying in part, quote, "The United States will continue to pursue the illicit movement of sanctioned oil that is used to fund narco-terrorism in the region. We will find you and we will stop you. Thank you to our brave men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard and Department of War." But not all Republicans are okay with seizing these vessels.
I consider it a provocation and a prelude to war, and I hope we don't go to war with Venezuela. It isn't the job of the American soldier to be the policeman of the world.
Also internationally, President Trump announcing last night he's appointing Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland as the president continues his push to acquire land there. President Trump is also set to soon speak with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu about possible strikes against Iran as the U.S. launches, quote, vengeance attacks on ISIS following those murders of National Guardsmen in Syria. But all the international conflict isn't slowing domestic policy. Data like consumer confidence and GDP are out this week. And National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett saying on Fox News Sunday, new ideas are coming.
I expect that most of us are going to be down for a big chunk of the week after Christmas at Mar-a-Lago, going through all the plans for next year. And definitely we have a big list of housing ideas that have been vetted very carefully by the cabinet secretaries to present to the president in a week or two. And we'll see which ones he picks.
It appears as though the president will have a busy Christmas week here in Florida, and we're tracking it all. Aisha.
Okay, Madison Scarpino live there in West Palm Beach. Madison.
Let's bring in Rebecca Grant, national security and military analyst and international relations expert. Thank you so much for giving us your time here as we get right on the cusp of the Christmas holiday. This sounds like potentially some major announcements coming this afternoon. The Secretary of War, Navy officials, the president making an announcement. Your thoughts on what we can expect later on this afternoon, possibly?
Yes, well, just on the Navy side, there is a lot going on as we seek to revive U.S. shipbuilding. You know, we're waiting for an announcement of a new Navy fighter plane as well. Don't know what they'll have to say. And then, of course, our Navy is pretty active right now chasing this, we believe to be the Bella, the tanker that has a bad history and is doing about 10 knots, thinking she's going to get away from U.S. assets in the region. So really all eyes on our seas in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, this is the latest slow chase of an oil tanker. Apparently, this one doesn't have oil actually on it, but has been known to make these trips back and forth. This one Iranian-linked. And two other tankers also seized. There are judicial orders related to the seizures that have happened, sanctions in place. Your thoughts on this effort, what it means for Venezuela and also for Cuba, which could be vastly impacted?
Yes. Well, there's no question. To me, it's very clear Trump is going after Maduro's money machine, whether that's the drugs or the oil. Also, the worldwide shadow fleet. You know who else runs a shadow fleet? Vladimir Putin. He's got 500 or 600 vessels, and he's seeing this and knowing, wow, they can go after me as well. But the top priority, of course, is Western Hemisphere and making sure that Venezuela has a chance, I think, at a better future and can't continue to spread the chaos and mayhem into the United States. That is Trump's #1 priority in this tanker chase.
One of the big focuses, it seems, that this administration is shifting a lot of focus on our hemisphere, on the Western Hemisphere, but also the influence on this area of the Western Hemisphere is coming from Russia, from China, from Iran, from Cuba, of course, which really stands to suffer under what's occurring right now. Your thoughts on just this overall effort, how it's being perceived around the rest of the world?
Well, that's exactly right. And we know that Russia and Venezuela have been buddies for a long time. And don't forget, the really #1 and only customer for most of this oil is China, which has made terrible inroads in our hemisphere. And yes, there is an impact on Cuba, but I think you see it in the national security strategy priority from President Trump, Secretary Rubio, to finally return American interests and leadership in the Western Hemisphere. We don't want outside influences or narco cartels or communist leadership to have as much sway in the hemisphere as they do now. We need to rebuild our relationships in this hemisphere, too.
Venezuela, of course, is not happy about this, and they've threatened to take things to the United Nations, which has a meeting essentially scheduled on Tuesday to talk about this, and other countries as well, trying to protect their interests. America pushing back against President Trump, pushing back on what he argues has been lost, our investments in that area of the world as well. What role will the UN play? Do they really have any power?
Oh my gosh, you know, the world pretty much agrees Maduro did not win that last election and his leadership is illegitimate. And what's going on is the closure of the sea lanes, the closure of Venezuela's airspace, so you can't be flying gold and cash out. U.S. pressure is the #1 factor here right now.
You know, I want to shift gears just a little bit over to the Middle East, as we spent a lot of time talking about what's happening here right under our country and in our hemisphere. This is Senator Lindsey Graham, and he's talking about the efforts to disarm Hamas and that they're not going very well. Take a listen.
Do you believe Hamas is ready to disarm?
Absolutely not. Hamas is not disarming, they're rearming. Hamas is not abandoning power, they're consolidating power. That's what the military intelligence people in Israel told me. That's what the IDF told me. That's what our own people told me.
Meanwhile, there are these great hopes to rebuild in that area, and some of those plans have leaked to bring the Gaza Strip back into an area where people can live and thrive. Your thoughts on what the senator is saying?
Well, Senator Graham is right. And remember, the key here after the Gaza ceasefire was to start disarming Hamas. We all knew this would be a problem, and they'd try to stick around and rearm. But we need that stabilization/policing force. It is time for Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, Indonesia has offered to send troops as well. It's time to step up and get that international stabilization force into Gaza. You know, Molly, it may take some U.S. leadership on the command and control side. We know we still have the assets in Central Command to do that if necessary. But we've got to see that force come in so that Hamas cannot reconstitute.
Yeah, Rebecca Grant, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us this Christmas week. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the President of the United States making an announcement. He's going to build 25 ships, 30,000 tons, going to be equipped with hypersonics, and it's not going to take 10 years. China comes in, and the reason for concern, they have between 300 and 405 ships. We cop out between 275 and 296. I believe we have 68 submarines. China's got 73. I don't know how they surpassed us, but we're going to have 12 to 15 more. The question is, Joey, how soon can you get it done? Because we've had to revitalize our shipyards. That's why we brought in the Japanese deal.
So the acquisition process, which Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, talked about this, is very convoluted. It's one of the main pork spending problems. There's preferential points where you can develop a lesser product at a higher price but still get picked up. There's a lot of problems there that they need to work on at the Pentagon. But he said, I mean, President Trump, he inferred that less than 10 years. He said, we don't want to take 10 years or 15 years, we want it quicker. And we're working on ships that aren't really ships, that are underwater drone boats that do a lot of things, carry people, carry bombs and bullets, can be offensive as well as defensive. And as much as we've talked about drones in the air, it's the drones in the water that are the next big thing. And when he says other Navy assets, I think that's what he's talking about.
All right, if we can, Kellyanne, let's switch over to the other big perilous hotspot in the world, and that is in Venezuela, where we've taken a third tanker in the last 7 days. The second one was taken yesterday. A third one's taken today. U.S. Coast Guard doing the damage. They're trying to squeeze Venezuela. What are the stakes right now?
The stakes are high, but this is American might at work. Why? You talk about all these deaths from drugs. You can say 2 Vietnam wars a year. You can say 30 times annually the number of people who perished here in the World Trade Centers on 9/11. The statistics go on and on. But here's the main point. these drug cartels have killed more Americans than Hamas has killed, a foreign terrorist organization. You can name all the terrorist organizations. So the president wants everybody to look at them that way. And also, he's got these Democrats boneheadedly now sort of supporting Maduro and the drug cartels. Why? They're on the side of the narco-terrorists by saying, hold on, it's just Trump's taking out marijuana, cocaine. That's not what's really bothering these kids. And this guy is illegitimately elected, Maduro. The same Democrats who said Trump is illegitimately elected every time he gets elected, but they can't say this about Maduro. I think Trump's going to continue for a couple of reasons. One is the drugs, that if you cut this off where it is, then we literally save millions of lives. Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, said something very important recently. She said, President doesn't look at this by the number of people killed. He looks at it as the number of lives saved. This is an important distinction for the commander-in-chief and the president. The second reason is the oil. Remember when President Trump said to Jeb Bush and others, well, the problem with Iran and Afghanistan is you guys didn't take the oil. He wants the oil. And he wants he looks at these oil fields as having been stolen by Venezuela, kicked out the U.S. companies like Chevron, Shell, and the rest of them. And he's saying you're taking the profits from the ill-begotten oil and you're trafficking human beings and you're kidnapping and you're flooding drugs and you're murdering people. So this has to stop. I just have to ask the Democrats with a straight face. I'm worried that Colombia may go in there and help Venezuela. I shouldn't be worried that a Democratic congressman is in there defending and helping Venezuela.
80% of the oil that Venezuela ships out, Jillian, goes to China.
Goes to China,
Yep.
exactly.
So this matters a lot. China loves their discounted oil from renegade countries and loves them coming in ghost tankers.
And one of the key questions is how much pressure is the administration, the Trump administration, putting on Chinese leaders to find other avenues, other resources for this stuff. To Kellyanne's point, as I understand it, the president feels that in the 70s and 80s, when Venezuela sort of like nationalized their entire oil industry,
Hugo Chavez.
They commandeered, U.S. Oil infrastructure that was there. What I don't understand is the president keeps saying last week and this week that America wants it back. But we're also not pursuing regime change. There is no way to, quote unquote, get that back with Maduro in power. The other thing I would like to ask the president is why we don't just take Maduro out and then we don't have to fight this whole war. And then we don't have to worry about.
You mean just kill him, capture him, bring him
or
back?
have him taken elsewhere. I was saying in the commercial break that Belarus's government has made an offer to give him safe haven if he wants to flee. He certainly has plenty of enemies inside his own country. I wonder how much pressure is being borne on him right now internally and how much longer he's actually going to last. I have not been to Belarus.
So we're not old enough, Jillian, to remember the Truman Doctrine and NSC 68, which was this idea that we go into pretty much every country in South America, and whether it's a liberal, progressive, or socialist, Marxist, go in and make sure every government in South America is not welcoming in the Soviets during the Cold War. I mean, it worked out great in places like Brazil or Chile. It didn't work out so great in Haiti, Cuba, a bunch of other places. And so this is kind of a re-upping of that, but it's done overtly, not covertly, number one. And number two, really this isn't about drugs. And I appreciate the president. I appreciate the work on drugs. Drugs, fentanyl, it comes from China to Mexico and across land into our country. What it's about is showing China, Venezuela supplies them with about 7% of their oil and gas, which is enough to make a dent. It's about letting the world and China know you're not going to come into our backyard and do what you did in Africa or tried to do in the Middle East, because guess who's in Afghanistan? It's China. China's in Afghanistan. And so you're not going to do what you did in those places here. We own the Western Hemisphere. We own the Americas. Do I care if life gets better for people in Venezuela? I would like for it to, but it's not my main motivation. I don't think it's President Trump's main motivation. If you can bring Maduro to the table to get Citgo legally back in the hands of Americans, which is what the courts are trying to do, to get access back for ExxonMobil for oil and gas. Well, I mean, if it's do that or die, if it's do that or exile, then maybe they do. And I think that's part of the plan.
Secretary Rubio gave this like 2-hour-long press briefing on Friday, and he said that option is off the table.
But my point is, if you just take him out, now you've got chaos again. And we've seen in South America that can go either way.
Well, where do you stand on this, Jess?
Well, I think there just needs to be more clarity as to what's actually going on here. You're getting conflicting messages. Some days it's a war. Some days we're going for a regime change. Some days we're just, taking out drug smugglers who are bringing cocaine and usually going in the wrong direction. Like that double tap strike, that boat was headed to Suriname, was not coming to the U.S. So we need clarity on that. And you have Rand Paul out there asking for that, and Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is excited about this, which indicates to me that regime change and war is coming, because that's what really gets Lindsey Graham all hot and bothered.
He's for national security.
Yeah, but I also want to point out, in defense of Democrats, we are not saying we love drug smugglers or we're on the side of Maduro. Here you have no. Well, then go and listen to Roger Wicker or Mike Turner or Rand Paul, who are Republicans themselves. Mike Turner's gone so far as to say, are we just killing random people here? I mean, Admiral Bradley testified behind closed doors. We'll see if we get the rest of the video being publicly released. We need to hear from Admiral Halsey as to what happened, what kind of orders are being sent out, because if there are people who are clinging to pieces of wood in the middle of the sea and don't have drugs on them and don't have phones that they're calling their friends to come and get them, we are violating U.S. code and international code as to how we're treating these people. They need to tell us the truth. And Trump always says this is so popular. 53% oppose U.S. attacks on alleged drug smuggling boats, and 63% oppose military action in Venezuela. This is not just for fun and games. This is really serious.
Nobody thinks it's not serious. And I think that for the first time in 25 years, we're addressing a huge problem in our hemisphere. And I think that's extremely popular with the American people.
You need congressional approval if you want to go
We're not going to a war, just like we didn't get congressional approval to remove Noriega.
Well, it's a question then of how long you can skirt technically being involved in an armed conflict.
If you're taking
every president has flirted with this. Every president has used what I forgot the name of the legislation, the War Powers Act, whatever it is. Every president, every predecessor to President Trump has used it in their own way. They flirted with it. They violated it here and re-upped it there. That's not a good place for Congress to go. They need to do their job for sure, but that doesn't get anything done.
Hopefully this is done before Christmas and we get the rightfully elected government in there to run their country. They seem to have a plan ready to go with their first 100 days.
Good luck.
But first, breaking tonight, President Trump is announcing plans to update U.S. battleships with a so-called Golden Fleet. It comes amid the largest U.S. military buildup in the waters surrounding Venezuela. 15% of all naval assets are now positioned in that region. President Trump is now saying a potential ground invasion in the region could expand to anywhere drugs may be coming from. Correspondent Madison Scarpino is in West Palm Beach tonight with the latest. Good evening, Madison.
Good evening, Brett. We just heard from President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, along with his secretaries of War, the Navy, and State. As mentioned, he announced a new fleet of large warships he calls battleships, but he also answered many questions about Venezuela.
He had a different kind of a president before me. They didn't mind being ripped off. They didn't mind being robbed. They didn't mind drugs pouring into our country. They didn't mind the jails of Venezuela and Trinidad being emptied into the U.S., where they take over Colorado and other places. I do mind.
It's been a busy weekend for the U.S. at sea. The Coast Guard and the War Department are working to seize a third oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Video from Saturday shows a Coast Guard special reaction team fast roping aboard a tanker from a U.S. Navy helicopter, as this was the second seized vessel in less than 2 weeks.
The Department of War has been fantastic partners in making sure we're not just interdicting these ships, but we're also sending a message around the world that the illegal activity that Maduro is participating in cannot stand. He needs to be gone, and that we will stand up for our people.
And while the Trump administration isn't backing down on its aggressive actions against Venezuela, and there is bipartisan opposition to the Maduro regime, there are some critics.
I consider it a provocation and a prelude to war, and I hope we don't go to war with Venezuela. It isn't the job of the American soldier to be the policeman of the world.
Meanwhile, the Russian government is pledging full support of Venezuela amid all this. The foreign ministers of both countries spoke on the phone today. One national security analyst had this message about the relationship.
We know that Russia and Venezuela have been buddies for a long time. And don't forget, the really #1 and only customer for most of this oil is China, which has made terrible inroads in our hemisphere.
And separately, there's been a massive shakeup at the State Department. The Trump administration is recalling about 30 ambassadors from different countries around the world. A senior official tells Fox that this is a standard process, and they say it ensures these countries advance the America First agenda. Brett?
Okay.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.